So today I'm continuing my series of conversations with leaders that are doing great work in the Twin Cities area, be they the head of nonprofits or entrepreneurs or business owners. And so today I have the honor of having Elle Rhodes with us, and she is the co-founder and co-director of the Brewing Change Collaborative. Good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning. I'm well. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank
And
you for having
so,
me.
so let's just get right into it. Tell us a little bit about the Brewing Change Collective.
So the collaborative was founded in 2019 by myself, Elle Rhodes, Nasreen Sajadi, and Ramsey Louder. Essentially, it came about because up at that point, I was the only Black person in the state of Minnesota to sell any beverage. As far as I knew. And so as far as anybody else knew as well, there hasn't been anybody else that said that they were there at the same time. And Ramsey was the only Black brewer, and Nasreen was the only person of color in the beverage space doing like science or quality control. So by circumstance and kind of like our own paths leading together, we came together and decided that this wasn't appropriate, that this was kind of insane. My personal experience was that I had had an interview with a local writer who called me and said, am I actually talking to a Black person in the beverage industry or in the beer space? Because I was working in beer at the time. And I said, yeah, weird random question. And she's like, actually, no, you're a freaking unicorn. You're the only one. And that kind of hit me. Like it was funny in the moment and kind of shocking, but also as I like thought about it, it was uncomfortable. It was why and questions about like what am I doing, but also like where is everybody else? And why is this something that I care about that seems to be singular? And as a result, I found kind of other people in beer and in beverage that were doing this and interested around the country, but not locally. And so I kind of made those connections and reached out to some people and made some really great friends that are still really great friends now, and brought that back to a conversation with myself and Ramsey, who was like, I'm going to start a thing and I want my people to be involved. Like, I want to see us represented. And I said, that would be exactly what I want too. And if we're going to do this, we have to do it for real. And so we brought in Nasreen and then started the group, which is essentially kind of sitting down with a bunch of people that we started targeting, really. I'm like, hey, we see you and we realize that we are not many. And we want to change that. We want to do something about that. So we had a meeting in early March of 2019, and we all decided, yeah, we're going to do something about this. And then in that moment, after that, having been invited to a couple of events and things hosted it by breweries, which was very gracious of them to just immediately reach out and feel welcomed in that space, we realized that we needed to make it official and become a nonprofit. So we formed the nonprofit, and it's been rolling ever since.
That is so interesting. So tell me why the brewing industry? How did you even become a part of the beverage industry?
Yeah, honestly, by being a consumer and a spectator. Um, I, my best friend and I would, go and have a drink and sit up at the bar, and it was kind of like seeing the world change at that point, I always say, because at that point, craft beer was still relatively new. And so the tap handles went from being like, your macro beers to more unique things that you'd never seen before. And that was still when like craft was very small. So getting something from like across the country of like was like, whoa, what is this thing? And everyone was really excited at that point. So I would try things and realize like he's really heavy into really hoppy IPAs, and I would try it and be like, this is disgusting. I'm not into that. And I would drink my Belgians and my lagers and be like, what is this? Why is it so different? It's the same, it's got to be the same base ingredients. Like, why is it so very different? And so just because of how my mind works, I was like, I'm gonna look into this. I'm gonna figure this out, and took a couple courses and classes and got just interested from that side of it. Um, and learning about beer and learning about the composition and the brewing styles and the vast knowledge that there is now that we have now in beer and brewing. And then kind of got overly obsessed, I guess, because then I found myself like wanting a career in beer and
Wow.
seeking out. I was already sales minded and already had that experience and realized that I could sell this. And if there's an opportunity for me in that, then that would be fun. So found my way in that way and making connections through the local brewing industry. And then that it was just a path. It was just a very interesting, unique path.
Absolutely interesting. And so I must say for me, I'm not a beer person. I don't know a whole lot about beer.
Mhm.
And so you were just saying like craft beer and lagers, and like I have no idea what those things mean. And so if
Mhm.
you would not mind just giving us a brief tutorial for me and my listeners about the differences in the beers and like what are the things that are the most popular.
Yeah. So actually, being black in beer is kind of a big deal because historically, if we go all the way back, um, not surprisingly, people of color were targeted for a number of different things, including advertising, including production, including, you know, all sorts of things. And that's no exception for beer. If we think back to like Billy D. Williams and all these people like being the face of a certain type of beer, like, and then like targeting black consumers from like Crown or Hennessy or all those things, like we're constantly being like targeted by certain brands. Um, and that hasn't always been pretty and that hasn't always been equitable, or if at all equitable. So most people of color, and especially black people, assume that they don't like beer because they don't have a lot of exposure to what is the vastness of beer. There are like, I don't know, 200 and something styles of beer. So when somebody says like, I don't like beer, I'm just like, it's just because you haven't found the one you really like. Um, because people assume, especially now, beer is IPAs, and that's a very hard line for a category. It's generally bitter, it's generally very hoppy and like earthy, and that
Mhm.
doesn't usually appeal to the palate of a person who's not experienced with beer. Um, which is why when you find people generally in the community that are like, I found my way to beer, it's usually through like a Belgian, which usually has some like sweetness
Okay.
and more like banana or yeast or wheat characteristics to it. So it's a softer entry. And sometimes a little bit more bready. So it appeals to people who have like more of a, like a culinary palate, so you're picking up a lot of those like bready baking kind of things.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so that's like how I found my way in essentially. Um, I love Belgians as a style.
Okay.
Uh, and then that's kind of where I took my research of like what is so vastly different about IPAs versus Belgians. But it's an entire category. And then I found my way after realizing I was the only one in Minnesota over to the community because there are a bunch of people throughout the country doing like not just influencer work, but also like brand building and community building. Like um, like Crowns and Hops. Crowns and Hops is a brand in or a brand and a lifestyle and people that started that brand in California. They're actually trying to open up a brewery in Inglewood to represent their community and
Yeah.
our community.
Yeah.
But they started the Black People Love Beer tagline years ago, and I found that like we do if we know if we have exposure to it because there's so many flavors and so many styles. We do love beer. We are, and it's more of a statement of we belong everywhere. Like we are not going to be pigeonholed or kept out of a thing. we belong in this space. So it's more like taking ownership and creating that space for ourselves. So that has been a movement in Black beer for, how long have I been in it now? 8 years. So they've probably been in it 12, maybe something like that. And they're great. And it's like Black beer travelers and a number of other people that are friends and in the community that are making waves in that space. And then beer wise is when, like when I was in beer was when we started the nonprofit, but we also opened it up because it quickly became a realization that it's not just one thing. We are excluded and kept out in many things and have a lack of exposure and involvement in many areas. So it wasn't just beer, it was spirits, it was cider, it was non-alcoholic beverage, it was kombucha, it was everything. So we opened it to every area of beverage um, that somebody had employment in, interest in, was adjacent to, because we wanted that community, because we're all of us, all BIPOC people are have a history or being excluded from that space.
And so the
So,
exclusion, when you're talking about the exclusion, so you earlier you were talking about us being targeted in a certain way. And so then the exclusion is us like owning breweries and being in the sales and actually having access to the money that you can earn, right?
right,
In that space.
right.
Okay. All right. So I just wanted to make sure I was clear on that. And so one of the things that I ask my guest with this being finance and affirmations, so you are the co-founder and co-director of this nonprofit. And so I like to ask though, like, what was your earliest memory or your early education about like your finances? Did you remember like, kind of what your parents taught you? Like what was that journey for you?
I feel like I have an interesting relationship with that. My parents, like I grew up in a middle class family, I'd say. Um, we on the East Coast and then moved to the Midwest. Um, my parents are successful and accomplished and have many different avenues into the business world and everything else. But I honestly don't think that either of them taught me about finances. I don't think that that was really a conversation that happened. I think that probably the first time even talking about balancing a checkbook was after like maybe a brief conversation after opening an account at the bank, and then that was it.
Okay.
I think that, like many people in our community, that is just not something that we pass on. I don't understand exactly what that is, like whether it's something that you don't have and you don't pass it on, or something you do have and don't pass it on. I don't know, but it doesn't seem to be something
Stop
that can. And
passing.
yeah, we're not passing. And we just started a financial wellness series with the nonprofit and having those conversations about like, what do you know? What is your experience to come into this point? It seems like we all, in one way or another, whether our parents had or had not,
Uh-huh.
none of us, it wasn't passed. It
Okay.
just wasn't passed. In the most part,
Right.
some of us had some experience. So I would say, I started also in a past life. I worked for an investment firm for a number of years. So
Okay.
I would say coming into that job was probably my first like real experience and like is the foundation of like why I understand investments or 401ks or any of those things, like annuities and retirement funds. The reason that I know about any of those things is because of that job, which
Okay.
has been very helpful. And I wish that I still had that 401k from when I started that one. But uh, yeah, I would say it was a very, very basic knowledge of anything before that point.
So then you have the nonprofit. So is that your source of income, or do you have another, like, are you working a 9 to 5 and then doing this on the side? How is that working for you?
Yeah, I take on a lot of things. Um, so the nonprofit is not my source of income. It
Okay.
is a passion project,
Mm,
for sure. And we accept, we're a 501(c)(3), so we accept donations and contributions from individuals and corporations.
okay.
And then I work as National Director of Sales for Denord Social Spirits.
Okay. Yeah. See you repping. So tell me a little bit about Denords.
So Denord is the first Black-owned distillery in the country. We started
Yeah.
almost 10 years ago, based in Minneapolis, founded by Chris Montana and his wife Chanel. And we make 6 expressions, 5 on the regular, and we have a special limited to release right now. Everything's award-winning, and we became the vodka supplier for Delta Airlines in October of 2021.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's been a big
All
couple
right.
of years.
Okay, so then again, me and the alcohol, I'm very limited. So you said like there's 5 different things that you offer. Can you tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about that?
Yeah, so we make vodka, gin, whiskey, apple liqueur, and a coffee liqueur. And then right now we have a barrel-aged gin as well.
Okay, and so you said the only Black distillery in Minnesota. Is that right? Did I say that wrong?
I said the first Black-owned distillery in the country,
Oh, first Black-owned
but
distillery in the country. Got it.
we might also be the only Black-owned distillery in Minnesota. I'm not sure, but it sounds accurate. I'm not positive.
Okay, and so again, help me understand. So a distillery and brewing, how is that the same? How is that different?
Okay, so brewing, you're making beer. A cidery makes cider, and distilling makes a spirit. You don't have to make all the spirits. We are fairly unique in the fact that we make so many different things. Most people like stick with whiskey or stick with gin or those kinds of things. Um, the process of making beer and making spirits starts very similarly, but ends differently. So it's all about sugars and fermentation, essentially. Um, and so, beverage space wise, they are ruled and regulated differently. Every state is different on what you can and cannot do. Um, in both in general, like spirit throughout like state to state, but also like different from beer to spirit and wine to spirit. They're all different and basically all links back to capitalism and patriarchy.
Okay. That seems to just be everywhere, right?
Yep. Yep. Somewhere
Um,
somebody was like, I'm gonna tax this because it'll make me money.
that's
That's
right.
how
That's
it goes.
right. And so then with Due Nord, so is it pretty widespread throughout the country? Where can you find those products?
We are working on national distribution. That's actually my job.
Okay.
Um, with Delta, we had to get distributed in multiple different places. I would say right now, one, you can order through our website, which is denordspirits.com, to most every state. We are distributed directly in 6 or 7 different states, the whole portfolio. And then we are available for the 50 ml vodkas that we do for Delta in 12 states. But that's through Delta specifically.
Got it. Okay. And so I will make sure that we drop the Do Nord information in the show notes so that everyone can have that. And then if you look at this on YouTube, which we'll be placing it there, Elle has on her Do Nord gear. She is repping her Do Nord gear. So that's wonderful. So then that's your full-time Then you're doing the Brewing Change Collaborative as a passion project. So then tell me a little bit more about what Brewing Change Collaborative is doing. You talked a little bit about, I know you guys have events and things of that nature. So if you can just tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So we have a monthly member meeting, which is on the fourth Thursday of every month. We do those in person, and are very happy to be able to do those, post COVID. And we also have, I like to call them different series. So we have a field trip series, we have a educational series, we have the financial wellness series, and then we have scholarships available. We have, what else are we doing? I feel like we do a lot, but I'm actually about to plan out this 2023 calendar for what we've got going. But we are trying to focus on community involvement and growth within the organization. We have a really great group and membership base. It is a national and international nonprofit because we have people throughout the country who connect with us, but we do meet locally. So trying to grow that base is focus for the year. So we're going to do some educational things with local community and businesses. We started the BCC 44, which is an educational series where we have amazing partners who are lending their time and experience in being business owners to our members who want to run any business idea or start their own business or have an idea for something and just don't know how to develop it and all sorts of things. Like this is the first business I've ever started. So to have that experience and somebody who has a long-standing running business and has started that and continues it successfully is information that we can all benefit from. And they were very excited to be able to basically open up their brain for our members. And then the financial wellness series just started at the end of last year. That is, again, a friend reaching out and saying, I have experience and expertise in financial planning and investment, and would like to open that information up to your members. So we started that. The field trip series allows for us to go to different businesses and learn about what they're doing, but also support other Black-owned and BIPOC-owned businesses. And this organization is like BIPOC focused, not just Black focused. So we do a lot within all of the different cultures that are represented within our community. And then we go around and support businesses, but also learn from other businesses. And then we have retreats throughout the year, which we try to focus on because, it's not a lot. We're in Minnesota, which to the north is very outdoorsy, very woody and forests and lakes and all that sorts of things. And then to the south is a little bit of that as well. And then, a little bit more prairie and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know that there's a whole lot of exposure for a lot of BIPOC people to be out in the woods or out on, somebody's lake home or out on a farm or those kinds of things. So we're trying to get more exposure to those things as well. And we have several retreats throughout the year that kind of gives us that space to be just in the quiet and peace and enjoy that together.
Okay, and so then you said that it's for BIPOC people. And so do you have to be in the brewing industry to be a part of your collaborative?
No, that is not a requirement at all. You don't even have to drink. We have actually one of our founders is sober, so they go back and forth on doing things and planning things and they're being socially responsible for what is happening in their lives at that time. So it's not a requirement to be in the industry, to work in the industry, to even care about working in the industry. It is certainly something that a lot of us have, but it isn't required. We have a number of people who work in finance or work at Target or something and just have an interest and also just want a part of that community and being able to be together, which is a lot. I think over the last several years, the evolution of being able to see this organization change and kind of the need for it, it started out as a way to be like, I'm not the only one in the room. And then when George Floyd was murdered, like in our neighborhoods, it became like a lifesaver
Yeah.
of sorts to be able to be real and raw together in a community of people that you love and trust. Um, and to be able to have other people like hear you and understand you without having to go into it,
Right.
and have to explain yourself.
Hmm.
And so it's kind of a respite at that point. And now, um, all of those things, I think that we are individually growing and growing as a community as well, just to have been through all of those things.
Wow, that's so I mean it's like so many things.
Mhm.
This collaborative is, it really is. And
Yeah.
so you're doing the education, and so they're, if they want to, learn how to improve their business or whatever, you have that. You're helping them financially, maybe get like what's financial skills.
Hmm.
Okay. And then just like you, I mean, that just really struck me, when you were saying being in a space where, you know, you can just be and not have to explain, because all of us kind of went through that experience together with
Yeah.
uh, murder of George Floyd, living in the Twin Cities and nationally, of course.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah. So you were just kind of saying how it's really evolved, and your goal is to expand. And so what do you want that expansion ultimately to look like? What do you want to see Brewing Change Collaborative in the next 5 years?
Oh man. I feel like we always have such lofty goals, and I'm always like, oh, we could do this. We could add this on.
Mhm.
Uh, so that's kind of my thing. Um, the point and focus of the nonprofit has always been for the internal community. And I remember that coming up on a number of different instances with things that were happening in our community, and also after George Floyd, and kind of one of our members asking, like, what do I say to this business or person that said, like, what's the position of BCC on this? And I was like, you don't have to be the voice for BCC. We are
Right.
the voice for you. And that's how that goes. You don't have to speak for us, we will speak for you.
Mhm.
And they're like, I just don't want to say the wrong thing and have it like misrepresent. I'm like, listen, BCC is an internal organization with an outward face. We are able to be seen for everybody, and they can certainly connect and create community with us and support us, but the focus of the organization is for its members. That is what it was created for.
Mhm.
And so the outside world, like even if nobody ever decided to connect with us ever again,
Mhm.
the focus of this is for us.
Yeah.
So what that is very important to me and to its founders. So the point, and we've come across a lot of different examples of why this is needed, a lot of different examples of like people being completely oblivious to its need, and a lot of examples of community members saying, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I needed. So it has always been an internal focus. So the goal is to increase that, but not because we're getting anything out of it, but because I realize its value for others. Like I
Yeah.
realize that having that community really matters. I realize that being seen in that space is something that is very important. Um, and thankfully, like the landscape has completely changed when I go to a festival or an event. Like the amount of faces that look like mine is so much more than they used to be. Um, but also, I also know that when that person walks in without that community, they still feel very alone and singular. And
Yeah.
so having that community to be like, I'm not here alone. I'm here with like a ton of other people that are in this room or in this space. And that's important. So the growth is more because I understand what it feels like to be on the outside of that. And
Mhm.
because I want that to be a safe space for everybody. I want other people to feel like they have community. And then aside from that, I just want us to have fun and continue to continue to grow and learn and increase our knowledge, but also I want to make sure that anybody that has the industry a desire of like growing or ownership or things like that, that they have that foot up to be able to get into that space. That if they, want to start a business of any sort, that they have something to start from of like, I know this, or I've gotten this education, or I've learned this, and I'm on a playing field that I'm looked at seriously and can pursue that. I don't ever want to have anybody's like walk into a door that they can't open. Um, and then aside from that, I want like lofty goals for the organization. I want us to have a physical space.
Mhm.
So that is our next crowdsourcing fundraising opportunity, to have a physical space where we can gather and create education in that space, and community in that space, and make space for other people in the BIPOC industry, or not even the industry, just like, if there's a person down the street who needs a event space, or if they need a place to do a pop-up for
Yeah,
their whatever in their kitchen. I want that to be, I want to basically remove barriers in
yeah,
every, like, I'm always trying to remove barriers. And there's so many barriers. So I
yeah.
wind up being like, okay, we got to do this and this and this. But I'm like, once you remove a barrier, then you can achieve greatness. And it's just like one thing after the other. So that's
Wow.
always the goal.
So what you're saying, because what I many times will do is have our guest affirm someone in some way, like who's looking to open a business, or who's looking to, do something maybe that they feel challenged or they have barriers.
Mhm.
And I love that you said that you want to remove barriers. You want to create a community that's centered on BIPOC people, who we
Mhm.
are, so that they can be seen.
Right.
And all of those things are affirming
Mhm.
uh for us in our community. I mean, so if you want to add something more to affirm someone, go right ahead. But I mean, everything that you just said in like the last minute, and we got about 3 minutes left here. So if there is anything more that you would like to add, please do so.
Um, I think the thing that always surprises me, like I walk through life like knowing that I'm Black, right?
Mhm.
I think I know that I'm Black. I know my experience. I know my experience differs from several other people who are Black. We're not the same.
Right.
Um, but also in like the BIPOC space, which Black, Indigenous, person of color, I think within the organization, the things that surprised me most were when somebody who could be white passing came up and said, I'm Indigenous, but I don't know that I consider myself BIPOC. Or I'm
Mm.
Asian, and I don't know if I consider myself BIPOC. I'm like, you clearly are. Like, clearly are.
Yeah.
Um, and and that's a whole experience. Like that is an entire lesson that I am still learning about the weight that that carries for that person to feel that they are something but aren't something, and that they can't be themselves in whatever fraction that or faction that is. So I would say that has been one of the larger things of the organization, to like make sure that it's not just Black and brown people, that there are still BIPOC communities that need that space held for them as well.
Yeah.
And we're not solely experiencing this experience. We all have somewhere that we have been excluded or targeted or whatever, and that community needs to be built together. And that's why we made it like, this isn't just a Black or a brown thing, this is a whole thing for all of us, and to hold that space for each other. We experience things very differently and have different experience in that way. So I would just say, um, find your community, make sure that that is something that you're getting, because that is soul affirming, to have a space, to have a family, to have a place where you are accepted and growing and able to contribute and give back as well. um, all of those things are highly important.
Well, Elle, I just want to thank you so much. I just feel the energy of your heart there. And we will make sure to drop all the information about Du Nord's and Brewing Change Collaborative in the show notes. So just thank you so much for being a part of our episode today.
Thank you so much.